So I'm not super impressed with the braking power of the Brembo pads that apparently come with the car. And I gather reading online that others have had issues with them too. So I've decided to go with a set of aftermarket pads that'll hopefully make it a little quicker to stop. The good news about this car is most cars with four-wheel disc brakes, the handbrake acts on the rear caliper, which makes changing the pads on them a real pain in the butt. On this car, because the handbrake is a totally separate braking system, the pads on the rear and the front both sort of slide in and out pretty darn easily. So it's really one of the easier cars to change brake pads on, believe it or not. Okay, I'm going to change the brake pads on my car, but before I do that I have to take some brake fluid out of the brake fluid reservoir up here. The problem with brake fluid is it is incredibly nasty stuff and it will strip the paint right off your car. So I've got trash bags taped all over the side of my fender here to protect me from any spray of this stuff, because it is truly nasty stuff and you don't want to be repainting your car. So I'm just going to use a syringe here with a little extension on it and suck some brake fluid out. Okay, starting with the rear pads, and these are almost stupidly easy to replace compared to most cars. You have to flip the spring, it's hinged down here, and you squeeze it in the middle to pull the top out of its little clip. So just have a pair of pliers here, grab it in the center, squeeze down, and the whole thing just unfolds. Now the pads slide right out, and they've got little holes in them, and I'm just going to use a skinny Allen wrench and use the holes to try and pry them out. And just sort of go top to bottom, and they will slowly slide out for you. Okay, so there's the outer one out. Now we'll work on the inner one. And it's going to apparently pop out even easier. Okay. So, both pads out. Okay, now that the pads are out, you can see there are two pistons on the inside and two pistons on the outside, and those need to be pushed back into the caliper. And that's why we drain the fluid out of, or some of the fluid out of the reservoir, because otherwise when we start pushing pistons in, it'll push fluid back up into the reservoir. We don't want to be blowing it out all over the paintwork. So let's see if we can push the pistons back in. So what I'm going to try doing is have a little hunk of metal here that'll cover two pistons at once, and I put some couple layers of painter's tape on the outside of my caliper so I don't scar it up. I'm going to just try using some channel locks to squeeze the pistons back in. Okay, that's one side done. I'm going to try the same trick on the other side, but I just wrap the tape around the one of the jaws there again to prevent scarring on the caliper. And see if I can gently squeeze back in there. Okay, I'm using some Hawk High Performance Street Pads, HPS, and they come with a little packet of goo that you smear on the back of the pads to try and stop squealing. So I've smeared it around. Now we just, oh, by the way, I'm wearing gloves at this point because I don't want to get my greasy fingerprints on the pad surface, because grease and brake pads mean lousy stopping. So now we'll just try and slide these in. And just push in until they won't push in anymore. And same thing with the other side. This is pre-gooed. And they slide right in. And now we just crunch the cage and put it back in its little slot there. Okay. It's probably hard to see, but the top of this thing hooks under a little thing there. So the cage is back in, the pads are all loaded. So that's one of them done, till we get to the bleeding part. Okay, amazingly the fronts are exactly like the back with the exact same brake pads, except the fronts have this little wear sensor on them. So you need to pry it straight out the back with a screwdriver or something. It kind of clips onto the backing plate of the pad, so it does pry off of there. Okay, getting the sensor in, I'm just sort of using my channel locks to gradually squeeze it down into its slot. Don't put your anti-squeal stuff on till after you get this darn thing in, because you're going to be having your hands all over the place, and you can bet that that stuff will get on the brake pads if you put it on before you try and get this little sucker in here. Okay, I believe it is where it should be. Straighten it out a little bit in here. Okay. Now we can scoop the back and slide it in. So after you've installed all your brake pads, then come back and check the fluid level in your reservoir and top it up if needed. Then hop in the car and start pressing on the brake pedal, and it's going to go all the way to the floor multiple times, because you press those pistons back into the calipers, and now you've got to press them back out until they hit the pads and the pads hit the discs. So just keep pumping until it starts feeling like a real brake. Then turn the ignition on so that you have the booster pump come in, and keep hitting the brake a couple times. Again, keeping an eye on the brake fluid level, because you want to make sure it doesn't get too low. Once you get that done, then it's time to start bleeding the brakes.